Hey guys, welcome to Outlaw Edge. Man, it's humid as hell right now, hotter than piss. So Heidi's, it would be her brother-in-law. He got a hold of me and he says, hey, I have this old table out here. It's like a workbench. And he was asking me if I wanted it, and I was like, nah, I don't know. And then he says, it's all solid metal, and I was like, So I went out there and looked at it, and ended up picking it up this morning. And he gave it to me. It's just a junk table, but I'm gonna put a little bit of work into it. It'll probably take maybe an hour and a half, something like that, and I'll be ready to use this thing. But my big welding tables, I have a lot of problems a lot of times when I'm trying to do TIG welding, because I have all my fine stuff set up to do the TIG welding. And a lot of times I don't want to move it because I have a whole bunch of projects that I'm doing with that TIG welding. So I wanted my own TIG welding table where I could push my chair up to it, but I could also use that table for doing like layout or drawings or, customers' bills or whatever. Because I don't like the desk that's up front. I don't really care for it. I use it every once in a while, but I'd rather just have it right here in my work area, because when the stuff's right there in your face, you don't forget about it. If it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So, but long story short, he gave me the table. I went and picked it up, and I'll flip this around and show what I got. So this table was just obviously built out of junk. This is like a small railroad tie, and this has been all arc welded together. This thing's 1/2 inch thick, which is amazing. There's a couple spots right here. I might fill these later and then grind them smooth, but I kind of like the character of it. It's a beat up old welding table, obviously, and it's really short, so it'll be perfect for putting a chair right there to do TIG welding, so I can sit down and TIG and still use all my magnets and stuff on it. These two corners here were lopped off and set at an angle. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these two corners, this one and that corner there, and I'm gonna cut those off at a 45, because they weren't cut off, and this is real sharp on that edge. And then I'll run a grinder around this, and then I'm gonna run some super clean on the top of this table, get all this grease and oil and crap off here, and see what I can do on the top and make it kind of cleaned up. And then that leg back there is bent. This thing was sitting in a horse barn, and so that leg's bent. A couple of them are bent up. I wanna take a jack and push them out. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set this up in the tool crib so that this is a TIG welding table only. I'll never use the MIG welder over there. So, and then I'm working on getting a mini lathe. So it would be nice to put the lathe on here also. And then that way I can kind of push the lathe to the back. And when I'm using the lathe, I can just bring it up front, clamp it down and use it. When I'm done with it, push it back to the table, the back of the table. That's kind of the plan. We'll see what happens. We'll see how it goes from there. Let me work on this and see what we can do. Some crazy weather today. 5 minutes ago it was humid and hot, now it's just pouring, so the humidity must have just let go. So we're using Super Clean, and I want to thank them for sponsoring this. They sent us a bunch of product, and the stuff is awesome. I just sprayed this on here, and then there's real bad oily spots that were all over this. It was like gear oil, grease and gear oil and whatever, and I'll get this stuff all cleared off. That way I can get the table cleaned up. And I really like how this stuff works though, so highly recommend that. So I'll get everything cleaned up real good. And then the next thing I think I'm gonna do, I already ground the edges and everything, so now everything's softened on the edges so you don't cut yourself. And then I have a bunch of rust on here, so I'm gonna sand the top of this, maybe with a grinder and a flapper sander disc. I'm not sure yet. I'll mess around with that. The next thing we'll do is we'll try to get these legs all straightened up. You can see that back one's real bad. So I just made a big mess. What I did is I got all this scale off the top of the welding table. And what I did is I just laid a bunch of paper towels on the whole table, and then poured 1 gallon of white vinegar on the table, and then I let it sit for like 3 hours. And it took most of it off. And then now what I'll do is, take this grinder with a flapper wheel and clean this whole table off so it's nice and clean. That way it's down to bare metal or whatever. But it worked out really good. And the next thing I gotta do is straighten that leg and do a couple other things, but get ready to put into its spot. So the next thing I did, I don't think I showed it on camera, but I put paper towels down on this, and the heavy rust, I took a gallon of white vinegar and I soaked all the paper towels. I poured a whole gallon of vinegar on this table, so it literally sat here on the towels and it didn't pour off until I started picking the towels up. But what that does is you let that sit for 5 or 6 hours, and then it eats up the rust. The vinegar will pull it off. Then you neutralize it with water. And then the next thing I did is I took just regular Carnauba automotive wax, and I ran it over here, so now the whole table's nice and smooth. And you know, I just rubbed it with one of those rags or whatever. And then what that does is when you're welding, if you do use the MIG welder on here, you're not going to get weld spatter. It's the same thing as like doing spraying this with weld spatter preventative or whatever it's called. You know, the spray. But then I cut the legs right here and re-welded them. They're still hot. I gotta be careful. And took my big square and I squared the legs so that that one has a brace on it, so I wasn't really too worried about that one. This one I got it nice and straight. So the legs are back on there straight. So now I can do a couple other things. I'm gonna mount a small vise right here. I don't need a massive one because this will just be for TIG welding only. You know, so I'm not gonna be hammering on it and beating on it and everything else. I mean, I might use this for doing small parts or whatever, but I also sat on my chair and pushed my chair up underneath here, and it's perfect height for TIG welding. So, you know, it was nice that I got this table for free. This was on a ranch underneath a bunch of hay bales and tools and over by tractors and stuff. It was all wet and nasty and rusty and crappy, and they were gonna throw it in the scrap metal pile, so I ended up getting it for free. The only thing I had to do is run out there, which is about 2 miles from my place, and they loaded it in the back of the truck for me, and I got back here and unloaded it out of the truck. And I don't mind that it has this seam in it, because this is, like I said, this will be just used for TIG welding, and I might even use this for my small lathe. I'm getting a lathe soon, and I'll put my lathe on the back of this table, and then, you know, when I need to use it, I'll move it forward, clamp it down, and then use the lathe, and when I'm done, clean up my mess and put it back. But the next video that I'll do on this table, I will be putting that up against the wall in a spot in the shop, and I'll show you what I did, you know, when I get to that. But I appreciate you guys watching. I'm gonna cut this video short. We'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. And then now what I'll do is I'll take alcohol and clean it real good with a wire brush and alcohol, and then I'm going to TIG weld around this real carefully. I'll TIG weld here, try to keep the heat down. So I bought these just Chinese arbors that you can run with cutoff wheels for a die grinder. I got these off eBay, and now I know why they were so cheap. So when they cut out this hole for this stud to go through, you know, it only needed to go to there. Well, they actually drilled all the way through till it hit right here. And then what happened is it pushed this stud completely out of there. Hey, stop. They pushed this stud completely out. So when I went to use them, well, when Joe went to use them the other day, the end just flew off across the shop. That could have been dangerous. And now I can see it's in there about, you know, maybe 3/16. And then when I weld around this was never welded. So it was just one piece that was done on the lathe. And at first I couldn't figure out what the heck it was, you know, how it was done. But now I figured it out that, and I just used a old style reamer, reamed it out a little bit till it was nice and tight, and then hammered it in there and put it on the drill, tapped it until it was nice and straight on the drill. And now that I know it's spinning nice, it's not gonna be wobbling, I'll go ahead and TIG weld it. So to weld this, all I did was take a 1/4-inch bolt, put it through the bottom, and threaded it into the bottom of the oh man, Arbor, and then on the front here, it's on a 1-2-3 block. That way I could put it in a clamp and get a nice angle to weld. And then just for extra ground, went ahead and just hooked it right to the 1-2-3 block. Bitch. Screw that up. I gotta clean that tungsten. Wear safety glasses, don't be a dumbass. So I used the belt sander like a lathe almost. I could have put it in the drill press too, and then just sanded it so it's nice and smooth. This thing's still hot from welding, but it's nice and straight. So that worked out good. Finished product. Now I'll be able to use that if I can figure this phone holder out. Anyways, appreciate you guys watching the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. But I'll see you guys on the next video. Thanks for watching.